Welcome back to another episode of Trash Talk. I'm Jon-Bernard. This is Nick. We are the K-Roos Bros, giving you the fight news from around the world. Nick, we are back. We've got a big show coming up because I'm not going to say there's no big card coming up this week. Derek Lewis is fighting this week, but there's a lot of news to cover.
I feel like the cards that are coming up next couple of weeks, I don't want to be the person to say they're terrible, but they're a bit disappointing. Like this Derek Lewis card, I think Derek Lewis is fun, he's funny.
Abu Dhabi's looking all right.
But that's in late July. We got 2-3 weeks to that. The UFC 318 card, Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier, has the potential to be the worst card of the year. And I know we've said this a couple times this year, and I don't like to take a shit because I love the UFC, but Paulo Costa is the co-main event. Before they announced that he was the co-main event, Dan Ige was the co-main event. Like, there's just not a lot of big names on this card. And people do take shit on the BMF, saying it's not a real title. It's an excuse to, make a card a main event or make a fight in a main event. And I feel like that's what this is, because the winner of Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, really has no implications on the division.
Well, Max says he doesn't want to come out and lose another trilogy.
Well, of course he doesn't want to lose.
He's probably got a bit of a point to prove. But no, you're right in saying that. I mean, Demetrius Johnson has come out on social media. He's been saying with MMA Guru, they have a show after every big UFC pay-per-view, and said, like, we're just getting used to these kind of lackluster cards, and we're kind of in a lull period of MMA and big cards right now, which I kind of agree with. But let's not discount it. We're going to do our mid-season MMA awards. And there has been some bangers this year.
Hey, you never know. Like UFC 312 in Sydney, we said that was probably going to be the worst card of the year. Kind of over-delivered, I would say.
Not in terms of fighters, but
the fighters on the card probably weren't the biggest names, but the fights did deliver. Same as well with, I think, what was it, UFC 316, the one before International Fight
Canada.
Week? Canada.
Yeah.
We said that was going to be a pretty shit card. Again, probably over-delivered, so they can surprise us.
Yeah.
Especially when the main event can be a banger. So if Holloway and Poirier put on a Joshua Van, Roy Valt style fight where they're just banging for 5 rounds, it could be the fight of the year, and it could deliver.
Let's get into the UFC hot take of the week. The hot take of this week is Volk will retire after his next title defense.
Well, if you looked at his comments recently, he was on a couple podcasts and he's been speaking about how his family wanted him to retire. They said after his fight against Diego Lopez, they wanted him to leave his gloves in the octagon and call it a day on his career.
Well, they asked him, why didn't you leave the gloves in the octagon? It's like Seinfeld. You go out on a high. Season 7, you're the best show on TV. Volk, you accomplished it. You
came back.
You came back. What was the quote?
Overcoming adversity. Whatever.
Adversity is a privilege, right? You let it all out in the ring. Why not just retire on top? And it must be very difficult for a fighter to retire on a win. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot more money to be made from Volk's side as well. But the family were asking, okay, how come you didn't? And I think a lot of people interviewing him, Ariel Helwani, were kind of surprised about his reaction after winning the title. He said, once I won, it was a kind of empty feeling.
Well, he said it was more of a relief. It was like he'd gotten back to that point. He obviously didn't get knocked out again, which I think he was very happy about. He was happy that his chin held up, but he just didn't get the same gratification that he did from winning the title in his previous bouts. And that's why when you talk about retirement, I think Dana White said it about Justin Gaethje. If you're starting to mention the word retirement, you know what I think, just retire.
You sound like you already got a foot out the door. But in saying that, do you think we see Volk multiple times? Maybe 2 or 3 more fights? Or do you think he defends the title one more time and he calls it a day on top?
I strictly think it's how the fight goes. Because the Diego Lopez fight was such a hard fight on his face.
It was a slobber knocker.
He copped a lot of shots to his face. Whereas if he versus Mosvar and it's a wrestle fest and he doesn't really cop much damage, then he's like, you know what? I can go one more time. One more time. If I can get one more big fight, one more money fight.
So it's a fight-by-fight basis.
It's a fight-by-fight basis. If he goes against someone like Gene Silver in his next fight and he gets into a slobber knocker again, I feel like he's going to say, you know what? I don't need this anymore. I'm cooking with Volk. I got my YouTube. I'm on Main Event. I'm on TV.
He's been everywhere right now. He's been doing podcasts with Andrew Schultz. He's cooking with Volk with, Action Bronson. The guys, he's all over the America.
So he's got so many more things to do outside the octagon. He's obviously got a lot of distractions. Doesn't want to train as much anymore. He's getting up there in age. When you get up there in age, you don't want to train as much. You don't want to get up early. So if he does want to call it quits after his next fight, you deserve it, Volk. You can do whatever you like. But I just feel like it's not even that hot of a take. Strictly because of his podcast that he's been doing recently, when you're talking about retirement, you're probably leaning towards that way.
Yeah, it'll be a sad day when we see Volk go again, the featherweight go.
But I'll feel like if he's going to retire after his next fight, do a Dustin Poirier. Announce it early so people know.
A retirement fight?
Yeah, so people know this is the last. Yeah. This is the last hurrah. This is the last time we're going to see the great.
Okay, we're now time for the mid-season MMA Awards. We are at the halfway point of the year. We're at It's been 6 or 7 pay-per-views this year. These are the mid-season MMA awards, starting with Fight of the Year. Nick, my Fight of the Year is Royval versus Joshua Van. Now, this fight caught everyone by surprise. It was straight 3 rounds of these guys just punching each other in the face. It was one of the most entertaining fights. We were there in the crowd. They did not stop cheering the whole fight. And Dana White came out and said after, this was probably a top 10 fight in UFC history. And on top of that, Joshua Van said he didn't feel like that in the ring. Then he said only until he watched it after the fight, he said, geez, this was actually one of the great fights.
Definitely was a banger. And if you were in the crowd like us, you were like, okay, these guys are just leaving it all out there.
Yeah.
And compared to the rest of the fights this year, like there hasn't been many bangers like that where they've just been going hard for the whole 15 minutes.
You didn't know who was going to win until that last probably 30 seconds to a minute in the final round. You had it for Royval all the way up until the end.
Until he got knocked down.
Until he got knocked down in the last round, you're like, okay, Joshua Van takes that.
And that for like flyweights as well, to be like putting on this type of a fight, respect, because people, including myself, they take a shit on the division. And they kind of prove people why they deserve to be in the UFC.
Okay.
Any honourable mentions, though? I can't really think of any other big
fights of this year. I mean, the Diego Lopez fight was up there. Went the
Diego
full 5
Lopez
rounds.
Volk was good.
That was a top fight. And then
Umar Merab I enjoyed a lot.
Yeah.
That wasn't really like that significant in terms
especially with Umar's injury. You probably discounts it a little bit. But no, I think that probably it for me.
Anyway, let's go to our knockout of the year. For me, it's Mauricio Hufi with the spinning back kick on Bobby Green. One of the most beautiful knockouts you ever see this year. I don't think any knockouts will really top it this year.
And you can see Hoofy's put out things that he was practicing that spinning back kick. He's shown that that's in his arsenal. He didn't just pull that out for a fight. That's his skill set. Pulls it out on Bobby Green. King Green is now 0-2 as King Green. And it was a highlight reel knockout. It's been the knockout of the year. I'm going to say honorable mention, Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, that was
beautiful. The way he just knocked him out with a single right hand. Charles Oliveira was already out with the single, follows it up with a left, and then gives him some more ground and pound on the floor. Definitely another highlight knockout of this year.
Why Ilia is up there is because he predicted it as well. He said, I'm going to knock him out in the first round. For him to then deliver and knock Charles Oliveira out in the first round, it's a very close second. But Hufi with the back kick because he was knocked out instantly.
What has been the card of the year?
This is a tough one because I feel like we said, there's been some lackluster cards. But for me, I'm just talking strictly main card. This is main card only.
Okay.
From start to finish, International Fight Week has been the best card of the year. With the Ilia Topuria knockout on Charles Oliveira, we had Van versus Royval in there, which was a great fight. Renato Moicano Dariush, I thought delivered as a fight. So overall, as a fight card, that's been my card of the year.
Okay, I'm going to go with UFC 314 in Miami. Volk's card. Volk versus Diego Lopez. The return of Volk, avenging his loss. Finally, adversity is a privilege. Gets the job done against a young Diego Lopez. And then you had other superstars on there as well. Paddy Pimblett gets a win over Michael Chandler. That was an entertaining fight. The build-up was very entertaining.
Gene Silva, Bryce Mitchell.
Silva was also, again, with everything going around with Bryce Mitchell and, who he'd like to go fishing with and who he wouldn't. And how that went up, blew up on social media. It was a very socially relevant card. I think it's the most stacked card of the year. Then you had Patricio Pitbull coming in from Bellator. Yair getting the win. I think that's easily been the card of the year so far. Nothing has topped it. International Fight Week was great, but if you're talking about stacked talent and social media relevancy, I think UFC 314 has been the card of the year.
Okay, now with the most important award, who has been the fighter of the year so far?
It's got to be El Matador, Ilia Topuria. I'm sorry, I can't move past him. The guy is currently my favorite fighter in the UFC with absolutely no bias. He just goes out there and knocks people out. He's only had one fight this year. He's probably going to have another. But the way in which he dismantled Charles Oliveira, the likes of no one in the lightweight division has before, and doing it coming up from featherweight in his first matchup at lightweight, he is the fighter of the year for me. No one has been as convincing, said how he was going to do it, knocked him out. He pretty much predicted how Charles was going to come forward and knock him out. He is the fighter of the year. He's the most entertaining outside of the octagon, and he's the most entertaining inside.
I have to agree. There's no one else really that has kind of elevated his aura, his stardom, as much as Topuria has, because going into the fight, whether he bought followers or not, he's now become the most followed UFC athlete in the world, active UFC athlete. So
and look, you can't say Islam after that performance against Moicano. It's like
he hasn't
done anything this year,
and no one's really had a really significant finish that's kind of grown them that much.
Would you say Merab?
He's already fought twice. That's the only reason I would give it to him.
He's fought twice. I mean, again, dominant against Sugar Sean and Umar. That he said everyone told him he was ducking him, and he beat them both pretty convincingly. So I'm just going to say Georgia wins. Georgia wins fight of the year.
Actually, I do agree. I'm going to give Merab the nod here because he's fought an extra time already. Because he's already fought twice. He's fought two guys that people said probably should beat him or could beat him. Umar being the bigger guy in that situation.
Yeah.
But the way he dismantled Sugar Sean, and then the fact that he got the finish, something Merab never does. Merab doesn't finish, and he got the finish. Yeah. I'll give the nod to Merab. Yeah, he does deserve it.
Yeah, well, Georgia on top, and it's been a great year so far. I think there's a lot more to go, bigger fights to be made. Coming on the back end, we've got a big Khamzat Chimaev versus DDP. You've got Tom Aspinall returning. We're here in October. I don't know if you've heard that. Have you heard?
I've heard many rumors.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's October Abu Dhabi, but it could be October Vegas.
Well, speaking about Tom Aspinall, John Jones says he wants to return to the UFC after being retired for only 2 weeks. Everyone's been talking about this White House card. As soon as Donald Trump hasn't released the Epstein files, but he has told the public that they are planning a UFC fight on the White House lawn. Right?
July 4th, 2026, there'll be a UFC fight card at the White House.
Which sounds pretty amazing. It's like the Sphere. It's never been done before. It's going to happen on the White House lawn.
I don't see it happening.
It's celebrating Independence Day. Apparently, it's already in the works. The UFC have confirmed it. John Jones sees that and tweets out, he goes, okay, now I'm intrigued to come back. Conor McGregor sees that, sending voice memos to Dana White at 3:30 in the morning. God knows what he was on at that time in the morning, right? But regardless, it's built a lot of intrigue. You might see some super fights on this card at the White House, right? Now with John Jones eyeing a return, he's tweeting out, it's nice to not be the hunted, and now I'm the hunter. And he's really showing intrigue that he wants to be on this White House card. We saw that he likes to do the Trump dance and perform in front of Trump. Do you see John Jones versus Tom Aspinall happening at the White House?
No. I don't see it happening at the White House because if Conor McGregor's interested, he takes first preference. I feel like Conor McGregor's a bigger superstar.
Against Michael Chandler?
Against anybody. Just if Conor McGregor wants to fight, John Jones.
But you got to think it's got to be an American fighter. It's American independence.
Doesn't have to be.
Colby Covington said he'd be interested to be on there.
Merab versus Sugar Sean at UFC No Trade. Neither of them are Mexican.
No, I understand that. But again, it's American Independence Day. Like you want an American champion on there. Right now, there is no American champ. So if John Jones is going for the title, that would make sense. A Jones versus Aspinall there would be amazing. And John Jones says that's the card that he wants to go on. It gives him a lot of time to kind of not rehabilitate, but kind of get ready. Like he needs that 6-month preparation time.
I know John Jones has re-entered the testing pool. He's allegedly started training again, but I don't believe a word he says because he said, I want 30 mil. They gave him 30 mil. He didn't fight. He said, I want to fight at this time. Everyone agreed to it. John Jones, I still call bullshit. So anything John Jones says at this point, take with a grain of salt. Don't believe it. Yeah. And the fact that he kind of says, I want to be the hunter, not the hunted. Like, come on, man. Like, relax. It doesn't make a difference. You're still going to have to fight Tom Aspinall.
Well, I think it's kind of been a smart move from him because now he's retired. He's not the topic of conversation. All the pressure now is on Tom Aspinall to defend his titles and prove that he's a worthy opponent of John Jones.
How have you been moved?
Conned.
Yeah, how have you been conned into thinking that he's like, oh, he's still the greatest of all time? If he goes into a fight, he's not defending the belt. He's defending his O. He's defending his zero.
He changed the narrative from I'm retiring now. What a great career I've had. Now let's see if Tom Aspinall can be a great heavyweight champion. And the thing now is, if Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane in October and has a shit performance, John Jones is going to be on Twitter saying, hey, I told you he was probably not worthy for semi. If he doesn't do a job and dismantle Cyril Gane the way that John Jones did, then it shows you like, hey, maybe John Jones should have won. And maybe now we do want to see that fight. So he's shifted the narrative, and now it's, hey, maybe I can face Tom Aspinall at this Washington DC at the White House, and that could be a lot of intrigue.
I don't agree. I feel like the fight is just, if it wasn't going to happen this year when John Jones was at his most healthy, at his most ready, because the longer he takes off, the harder it is for him to come back.
And tell me, Tom Aspinall versus John Jones wouldn't make sense on Independence Day.
UK versus
it's
USA.
When they fought for their independence. John Jones would be going there as a face. You'd be wanting to cheer him on Independence Day as an American. You'd get all the American fans behind you against the English fans. I'm telling you, Dana White, let's make it happen.
I feel like if Donald Trump wants it to happen badly enough, then it will happen.
Yeah,
but
some tax dollars will go towards it.
But there's a lot of geopolitical stuff going on, a lot of wars. So I feel like that could maybe divert the situation. Maybe like they say, look, I don't think we want to maybe put a UFC event on while there's this other shit happening.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like it's not going to happen.
Okay, what did you make of Ian Gary calling out Bilal Muhammad? Ian Gary likes to do these video call-outs where he talks directly to the camera. He's got a big social media following, full credit to him. And he calls out Bilal Muhammad, says, I want to take you on in your hometown of Chicago. You keep calling out Usman, who already said he doesn't want to fight you. You're evading me. Let's make this fight happen in Chicago. Do you see the fight happening? We spoke to Bilal. Do you see Ian Gary versus Bilal happening?
Well, Ian Gary must not watch our Kick live stream because we had Bilal on there.
Yeah.
And Bilal said, I asked Bilal to his face, I said, Chicago's coming up. You're from Chicago. Will you be on that card? He's like, look, I'm just not going to be ready.
Yeah.
I'm still recovering. I've still got to train. So if Ian Gary did tune into our live stream, he would have known that there's no chance that Bilal's going to be on that card. So Ian Gary calling out Bilal for Chicago, it's not going to happen. Maybe it can happen later in the year because Kamaru Usman, for some reason, now doesn't want to fight Bilal. But Ian Gary, I feel like that's a good matchup. It's someone that's above him. And for Bilal, it's someone that is somewhat in title contention and kind of returns him back into the title picture.
Yeah.
So the fight does make sense. It's just not going to happen in Chicago.
I don't know why Usman versus Bilal doesn't make more sense. It's the fight that has been built up. They got a podcast of making Usman cry on that hasn't been released. There's some bad blood between the two there. Usman just wants a straight title shot, but everyone in that division right now wants a title shot. If you're Shavkat Rakhmonov, Usman, Islam just goes up and gets a title shot. Ian Gary's one win away from a title shot. Bilal wants his rematch. So the division is absolutely clogged up, and it's going to take an impressive performance from someone, which I think is an Ian Gary or whoever wants to take on Islam next, if he beats JDM. But yeah, I don't know what that division holds. I think Ian Gary's probably better off trying to face a Sean Brady or someone that can kind of show that it's a better matchup.
I know Islam going up does create a lot of confusion.
Backlog, yeah.
But these fighters, like, you got to look at so people like Diego Lopez. He got a title shot because he was active and did the UFC favors by calling up when he was asked. These guys like Ian Gary, he's getting into the title picture because he said, look, I'm doing you a favor. I'll come in on short notice.
He wants to be active.
To fight.
I'll back up.
Like Shavkat, Sean Brady, Leon Edwards, all these guys, Bilal, Kamaru. You guys are trying to take too much time off. Like, you can't get a title shot if you're just going to sit on the sidelines and wait. The whole division is just like, no, I want a title shot. I'm not going to fight anybody else. It's like, yeah, but not everyone can get that. Only one person can get the next title shot. And right now, that next person is Islam. And say if Islam wins or if JDM wins, but they have a slugfest and one of them gets hurt, they're not going to fight again for 6 months. So, like, there's not going to be an interim title. So these guys need to somehow eliminate each other. And if you are the best fighter in the world, you should be confident and be able to fight anybody.
Yeah, I feel like UFC is not like boxing where you can take a loss and still look good and, put a couple of 2-fight win streaks together and be back in title contention.
Bilal just lost. But if he goes and wins 2 more fights, he gets another title shot.
100%.
I feel like he knows that and he's happy to fight. He just needs to recover because his face did get pretty, disfigured in that JDM fight.
Split lip, everything. But he looked okay when we spoke to him.
Hey, he looked fine.
Yeah,
he was wearing the glasses as he usually does, so you can't really see too much.
We did ask him about JDM versus Islam, and he says he doesn't think JDM will be able to match Islam's technical skill and his wrestling. But Ariel Helwani spoke to Craig Jones recently, and apart from talking about jiu-jitsu and him recently being drugged in Colombia, he did mention he does back JDM heavily and think Islam does not know what he's in store for. He thinks it's going to be a super difficult fight for Islam. He's facing a guy he thinks has the best scrambling ability in the UFC. And I'll quote Craig Jones here. He goes, he thinks the size difference is going to be a lot bigger than people think. And we saw how Volk did on the ground against Islam, and Islam struggled with him in those grappling exchanges. But having seen Jack working with Volk, he says his skill is going to be unmatched, and it's a perfect matchup for JDM. So he really thinks Islam is going to struggle against JDM.
Look, I love Craig Jones.
He's entertaining.
Wealth of knowledge, entertaining. But this is like asking Khabib how he thinks Islam's going to go. Like, you're asking the guy's trainer, of course he's going to give him a rap. Of course he's going to say he's going to do very well. Khabib's going to say Islam's going to dominate JDM. He's got no match for him. So, like, I will take it again with a grain of salt because he's his trainer. He's his friend. He's not going to take a shit on his friend.
Craig Jones is the Dagestani solution. You know what I mean? He is the problem solver. And he pretty much, what's the term? He was the kryptonite to Bilal's wrestling. It was not used at all. Yeah, and people are saying, why didn't Bilal shoot more? He did, and JDM scrambled pretty well. And if he's saying that JDM scramble is the best in the UFC, I believe him. I believe
Bilal has trained in Dagestan. He's not from Dagestan.
Okay, but what about the point of Volk having great
look,
success
look,
against
okay,
Islam,
no,
and now he's saying JDM's much bigger and a better scrambler.
I understand JDM's much bigger, but you're talking about prime Volkanovski here. Like, don't discount it because JDM's a great fighter, but comparing him to prime Volk, I understand that he's smaller, but prime Volk is someone...
No one's comparing him to prime Volk.
Well, you're saying if you're saying
he's saying, I'm saying
Volk
Craig
did this
Jones
well-
is the coach, and he's saying his scramble is the best in the UFC, and seeing him and Volk train together, this is a perfect matchup.
It's
coming from
a
the
trainer.
coach.
I would say you got to look at it unbiased. Craig Jones in this situation is severely biased. Okay, if he wasn't training JDM, you can maybe take it a bit more
So if he's
seriously.
saying that Jack's got the best scramble in the UFC, and he's been training with Volk, and I think he's going to do better, and he's a lot bigger than Volk, who's gonna disarm Islam's wrestling better?
I don't know.
It's yet to be seen, but if it's coming from Craig Jones,
Well, because I'm saying, but it's like
Dustin Poirier pretty much almost did it.
No, he didn't. He got submitted and he got
He
dominated.
got submitted, yeah, but they had to stand up a lot, and he practiced a lot of wrestling with a broken rib. He came out and said,
Allegedly.
so
It's very convenient that he had a broken rib.
okay, but I'm saying I like Jack as the fight comes closer and closer. Bedtime MMA, shout out to Bedtime MMA. He's been saying Islam's going to have a problem. I think people are coming to the conclusion that this might be actually a tough fight for Islam. It's just going to be an easy win.
Of course it's going to be a tough fight.
And I'm
but
back in the Aussie.
I just think Islam, he's one of the greatest of all time. He could be the greatest lightweight of all time. And the way he fights, it's just... Look, Jack had a great performance against Bilal, but that was more of an outlier in terms of his ground game. Because if you go back to the Gilbert Burns fight, he did get dominated on the ground. He got taken down a few times. And whether Craig Jones has improved him enough to get to the Dagestani level, because he did look great against Bilal, but Bilal's not Islam. And again, Volkanovski did well, but that was Volkanovski. Like, he's one of the greatest fighters of all time. So, like, Jack's got a lot more ways to go to get to that Volkanovski status.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully they make that announcement soon. I think we're hearing it's more and more likely going to be November at Madison Square Garden, which is going to be huge.
Why is it so far away, though? Like, they should be fighting in, like, October minimum. Like,
Could be Abu Dhabi. I mean, you never know.
I don't see why it wouldn't be. Like, October in Vegas as well.
Yeah,
like,
I just think both have expressed New York. That's going to be the place to do it.
that's terrible for Jack, because the flight from Perth to New York, very long way.
I'm sure he'll just do what he did for Canada and get there 2 weeks before.
Yeah, but it's a
Climatise
hard
himself.
ask. It's a
Okay.
different time zone.
Now, speaking of the next title defense, it's Khamzat versus Dracus du Plessis in Chicago. Going to be an entertaining fight, but what we've been seeing on social media is Khamzat is in the US. He is preparing like he's going to war. He's got Arman Sarukian with him. He's assembling a dream team of grapplers, and that seems like it's what's going to be the game plan. He's just going to try and grapple, pretty much what he did to Rob Whittaker. Shoot early, nice and low. And who better than Arman Sarukian to bring in? You've seen these guys grapple each other before.
High level wrestling.
It is extremely high level.
Look, Khamzat Chimaev being in the US, just that is shocking enough. I'm surprised he's allowed in the country because of all the stuff that's happened with him. But I'm very excited to see him there. He's taking photos with guns. But Arman Sarukian being in the octagon with him or in the training room with him, it's only going to make him better because these guys are two top high-level wrestlers in the UFC. And I think, does that mean that Khamzat is just kind of releasing his game plan? Like, I'm not going to go with a striking coach. I'm not going to be training with strikers. I'm training with wrestlers because I'm shooting no matter
And
what.
he's working with some conditioning coaches as well. So I think he's preparing it to go a bit later and not just be a first,
And like
second
what he
round
said after his last Abu Dhabi fight against Rob Whittaker, he said, hey, Rob Whittaker took Dricus du Plessis down. What do you think I'm going to do?
Yeah.
What he said, Salam alaikum or something like that. He said that in the press conference. So, like, he's very confident. He knows that he can take him down because if Dricus can get taken down by Rob Whittaker, Khamzat Chimaev is going to have a field day.
And we'll do a preview of it during fight week. But how I assume this fight going is, and this is what Rob Whittaker has said, this is what a lot of pundits have said. If Dricus can withstand the barrage of wrestling that Khamzat does in the early rounds, and then they go toe-to-toe, that's his best chance. But if Khamzat, just is mauling him like he has done to Robert Whittaker, like he's done to opponents in the past, and is just non-stop smothering him with the grappling and finds a finish, that's his best chance. And I don't know if there's an answer to it yet in the UFC, but if there's a fighter to do it, it's Dricus.
Just by accident.
Just on accident.
But the thing is, like, if you look at Khamzat's two toughest fights in the UFC, Kamaru Usman and Gilbert Burns, they're both high-level, on-the-ground wrestlers, grapplers, whatever you want to put it. And they're the ones that give him the hardest time because they somehow negate his wrestling and then bring it to striking, and that's where they can do their damage. Dricus, I don't know if he's a high-level wrestler or someone that can withstand the takedown. Like, if his takedown defense is going to be that good, it's going to be very hard for Khamzat to take over, because I do think Dricus can win in the striking. But again, has his takedown defense been that tested to know whether he can withstand someone like...
What do you think of Arman being in the camp? I mean, he's been the backup fighter. Now he's in Khamzat's camp. He's doing everything except fight.
Well, look, the the Twitter comments reacting to Arman being with Khamzat were like, this bloke is doing everything except accepting a fight.
Yeah.
Okay, he's pulled out of the fight in January. Now he's doing grappling competitions. He's been to 2 or 3
he's
already
trying to
this
stay
year.
active. He's trying to stay active.
He's been a backup fighter.
Yeah.
Just actually accept the fight. How about you do that, Arman?
But he says that he has. He went on Ariel Helwani and pretty much said, all these people coming out and saying, I'm not trying to be active. He said, the only reason he didn't take a fight against Mateus Gamrot is because they trained together at the top team.
Yeah.
Right?
And so that was really awkward last time they fought.
That's completely fair. But in terms of, I think he said yes to majority of other people.
No, he said they've only offered him 2 fights. So since January, when he pulled out with his back injury, they've only offered him 2 fights. The first fight was Justin Gaethje, but he said, I need it to be at catchweight. Justin Gaethje said no. So Arman did say yes to that. And then the second fight was Gamrot, but they said, look, mate, we've fought each other before. We're in the same team.
Ultimately, him weighing in as the backup fighter, showing that he can make weight for that Ilia Topuria fight, is him trying to get in the good graces of the UFC, trying to get back on Dana White's good side. And Dana addressed that in the post-match press conference, said, you know what, it's a good step in the right direction. But I don't know who he fights next, and I don't think it's going to be for a title.
I feel like it's not going to be for the title. I feel like the UFC, they're not punishing him, but like he's in the naughty corner.
Yeah.
So I feel like he's got to verse Paddy or Gaethje in a number 1 contenders fight, and that'll be the way to kind of get him back to the title shot.
Well, Rob Whittaker is set to fight RDR in Abu Dhabi. Now, this card is more stacked than Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier's card, if we're being honest with you. The UFC love putting on a good card in Abu Dhabi or Saudi Arabia, right? So you've got that main eventing with Shara on the card. You got Mosvar on the card. But Rob Whittaker has pretty much laid out a 4-fight plan to get back to the champion and retire on top. So he does want to stay in middleweight. He has toyed with the idea of going up, but he says, I've got a 4-fight plan to regain the championship, and then I'm going to retire at the top. So what did you make of his 4-fight plan?
Rob, I'm a big fan. I just don't see this happening.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure before your Khamzat fight, it was a 3-fight plan. And every time you lose, you're just going to keep adding fights to this plan, and the plan's going to change. Yeah. Look, I do think that he can beat RDR. I feel like RDR's on a bit of a run right now after beating Bo Nickel and, having a good couple knockouts. But Rob Whittaker is one of the greatest middleweights in the UFC history. Very underrated. And I don't think RDR's going to do a Khamzat to
Kaya Barilio said this fight's kind of bullshit and shouldn't be made. It's kind of like he thinks Rob Whittaker's going to win, but the fight should never have been made. He'd been calling out Whittaker for a while. It just sounds like the UFC gave, Rob a 4-fight deal and said, you're probably not going to get another one after this. So there's your 4-fight plan, and then hopefully, you do end up with a champion. But realistically, what is it? So he beats RDR, then maybe beats a Strickland.
Well, I feel like he says, I need 3 more fights before I get a title shot. So say he goes RDR, Strickland, then maybe like an Imavov or a number 1 contender, Kai Barilio, then versus for the title. He obviously doesn't know what the UFC division is going to be like in 4 fights, but where I'm just going to say I don't see a plan working out, at some point you're probably going to have to verse Khamzat again. How do you see that fight going differently?
Either as champion or
as a contender.
Exactly.
How do you see that fight going differently, Rob? Like, do you think you can beat him after the last fight?
Yeah.
I don't think so. So
can the teeth hold up again?
So I feel like a 4-fight retirement plan makes sense, but a 4-fight retirement plan into a championship, that's where it's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, I want to see Rob get some wins. I mean, he hasn't been in the octagon since the Khamzat thing. He says he's going to go and try and find RDR with an absolute rocket of a right hand and just knock him out.
Again, I can see that happening.
Yeah, it definitely can happen. I mean, these guys are just going to stand and strike. You saw what he did to Bo Nickel. Couple of knees to the abdomen and he was down. So I think it's going to be a good striking battle. But again, I guess we'll wait and see. RDR could just put a stop to this 4-fight plan.
Anyways, let's go over to our next segment because this is something that I saw on TikTok and I want us to go through it.
Okay.
It's current UFC champions versus their division's GOAT. So whoever the champion is in that division versus the greatest of all time in that division.
Okay.
Starting with Pantoja versus Mighty Mouse.
Okay,
How do you see that going?
The flyweights. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. Mighty Mouse is known as the GOAT of the division for a reason. I'm not going to say I've sat here and watched every Mighty Mouse fight, but I have seen all of Pantoja's title defenses, and I'm going with Pantoja. When it's all said and done, I think he's going to be the greatest flyweight of all time. He's going to have the most defenses. He's going to be the most dominant in the UFC flyweight division. And I just think he's a step above, whether it's striking, grappling. I just think he's a step above Mighty Mouse. There's a reason I think Mighty Mouse said, I'm not going to come out of retirement and face him, even though he probably could at his age right now. I'm going with Pantoja.
I feel like the only thing that's guaranteed in this fight is that it would go to decision.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go Demetrius Johnson by decision.
Okay.
But let's go to the next one. Merab is currently the bantamweight champion. Merab versus Dominic Cruz.
Okay, Dominic Cruz.
Because Merab is kind of the bantamweight goat already, so you're not going to have Merab.
Okay, but you're going to say the bantamweight goat. Look, who beats Merab, honestly, in the bantamweight division? The guy has cardio like no one's ever seen before. He's the fittest guy in UFC history. Dominic Cruz couldn't last that long with Merab. And I just think, whether it's striking, yes, Dominic Cruz had that unorthodox kind of striking, but I think Merab can kind of put that away with his wrestling and his control time like he has done with every other fighter, including Umar, including Sugar Sean O'Malley. So, again, I think it's a Merab win. Easy. He probably goes a distance, Merab.
Merab 50-45. Like, this is going to be a total annihilation. Merab is just too good. And Merab is the greatest bantamweight of all time, so Dominic Cruz doesn't stand a chance.
Okay, the featherweight division. Current champion Volk, but the featherweight GOAT is also Volk. So who would win, Volk versus Volk? Is that what we have to do?
No. Volk versus Jose Aldo.
Okay.
Jose Aldo was known as the greatest featherweight of all time before Volk, so we go Volk versus Jose.
Well, I know you can't talk about it. You're going to talk prime Jose because the current Jose that just fought Zahavi.
Yeah, it's prime.
You know, that guy's not beating Volk now. So prime Jose Aldo, the Jose Aldo that fought Conor McGregor, again, I'm taking Volkanovski.
But the thing is,
I'm taking current champ.
Where you're going wrong is this prime Volk or is this Volk now at 36?
Volk now.
Volk now at 36 beats prime Jose Aldo.
Okay, I see what you're doing.
That's what I'm saying because
that's tough.
If it's prime Volk, it's Volkanovski easily.
Yeah.
But Volkanovski at his current age against a prime Jose Aldo,
yeah.
probably juiced up as well. I'm probably going to go Jose Aldo.
I'll take Jose Aldo. Just probably the kicks, the striking would probably be a bit
Just
too
the
much
age
for
difference.
Volk.
Just the age
difference, the sharpness, and then as well as on top of that, the grappling. Yeah, I would take Jose Aldo.
But the thing is, Volk already did beat Jose Aldo in a fight, so we have seen this fight, but that was prime Volkanovski. This is young. I think he had a bit of hair in that fight. So, like, it is different. We're
this
going
is third round decision. You're talking prime Jose Aldo versus current champion Volk. You're probably taking prime Jose.
Okay, let's go over to the next division. We've got Ilia Topuria, the lightweight champion, against the lightweight GOAT, Khabib Nurmagomedov. Who do you got? Islam versus Khabib. Sorry, Ilia versus Khabib.
Ilia Topuria knocks out anyone that you put in front of him. It's already been seen. He's knocked out every single legend in the sport that is currently active. If it was prime Khabib, really, apart from Conor McGregor and Justin Gaethje.
Poirier.
Okay, what's the best part about Khabib's resume?
He's just never lost a round. That's the best part. He lost potentially one round against McGregor, but Khabib's never lost a round.
Does it stack up to Ilia knocking out Charles, knocking out Max Holloway, knocking out Volkanovski? Does it match up against that?
I would say that Ilia's resume has been better in terms of like shock value.
And he's 28
total.
and he's 28 years old.
Yeah, but I just think like Khabib as a matchup, the total wrestling, just pressing him,
and if you think that
suffocating him,
if you think Ilia doesn't have an answer to that wrestling and it's not going to be a stand-up battle, then I think you're wrong. And that's why I'm going to go with Ilia. I think Ilia would be the better striker. I think he would probably catch Khabib like how Conor caught him with a shot. But the difference is if Ilia catches you, you're probably knocked out cold.
Look, I do think Islam is probably the best matchup to see how this fight would go.
Khabib?
Yeah, I'm saying like as a simulation for real life.
Yeah, 100% it would
if
be.
Islam versus Ilia. But the thing is, because Khabib's never lost a round, and because Ilia, like Volkanovski said, he's never really been tested 5 rounds, pure wrestling, pure cardio, to see how he would go against one of these fighters, I'm just going to lean towards Khabib just based on respect.
I'm not.
But if Ilia does beat somebody like Islam, he's the greatest lightweight of all time. It's not even a question.
Ilia already celebrated the win against Khabib. That never happened. He already had a dinner.
I saw him having dinner and wine.
Yeah. Okay. JDM versus George St. Pierre. Now, JDM said this guy was his idol growing up, and he met him in Canada. But I actually don't know who to pick here. Because JDM, yes, he hasn't really defended his title. He beat Bilal for his title. Is he the best in the welterweight division? Again, these are answers that I don't have. But GSP is the GOAT for a reason. Came back, beat Bisping. Like, I just think right now, current Jack wouldn't beat GOAT GSP. Is that fair?
No, it is. That's very unfair because Jack Della would beat GSP. I think as a matchup, if he can do it.
I just think we haven't seen that yet.
No. I'm saying his takedown defense alone would be able to suppress GSP because that's where GSP wins.
And you're saying his striking is better than GSP.
And his striking is much better than GSP. If he can negate his wrestling and his takedowns,
wow,
Jack Della would win. I know that's a big stretch because GSP is one of the greats, but if you really watch back GSP's fights, very boring. He likes to just take people down to the ground and try and smother them and hold them for a decision.
I
Jack
agree,
Della
I
can
can
get
agree
up
with you,
and
but
he can strike.
I'm saying you haven't really seen that as Jack as champion yet.
Well, I think like if Islam beats JDM, then that's probably how.
All right, we're on the home stretch. DDP versus Anderson the Spider Silva. DDP by accident. DDP going in with no game plan, swinging his arms, probably lands while Anderson Silva's trying to showboat. Look, I don't know. DDP continually surprises people, so this is kind of up in the air, but you have to give respect. Anderson Silva's on a lot of people's Mount Rushmores. The guy is a striking freak. I'm going Anderson Silva.
I'm not sure if everyone's been on TikTok MMA, but everyone's seen the clip of Anderson Silva when some guy was just trying to throw overhands and then Anderson Silva just dropped him. Boom. I think it was Forrest Griffin. He was going like a madman, something that Dricus does a lot, and Anderson Silva just dropped him. So I feel like we've seen this, so I'm going to give the nod to Anderson Silva.
Okay. Ankalaev versus GOAT John Jones at light heavyweight.
John Jones by whatever he wants. Yeah. John Jones by whatever he chooses because John Jones at light heavyweight is unstoppable.
Yeah.
I feel like people say John Dominic Jones. Reyes versus Gustafsson maybe got him, but Ankalaev, if he couldn't take down Alex Pereira,
exactly right.
What's he going to do against John Jones?
I mean, Pereira stuffed down pretty much all 10 of his takedowns. John Jones is an unbelievable wrestler. And on top of that, an even better striker.
His fight IQ is way too good.
Yeah, with his fight IQ and him going in with a game plan, I think he knocks out Ankalaev, to be honest with you.
Now going to the heavyweights, the current heavyweight champion, Tom Aspinall versus the GOAT, Stipe Miocic.
I'm going Tom Aspinall within 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, look, this one looks pretty easy because if you look, people, when they talk about Tom Aspinall, they say he's the evolution of the heavyweights. He's faster, he's bigger, he's more technical. Where is Stipe better? Nowhere.
Yeah, no, I don't even think he's better on the feet. And in saying that, like, look what Tom Aspinall did to Volkov. Finishes him by like a Kimura submission. Like, he is good everywhere. He's kind of like the ultimate heavyweight, can move. He's very mobile, and he can knock people out. I think if you're looking at Tom's past fights, the way how quickly he does it to heavyweights, I think this fight ends in a round, which is crazy because John Jones couldn't do that to Stipe.
Yeah, John Jones is also an old man. So I feel like we're going, and look, Stipe, we're not going off his last showing against John Jones. We're going prime Stipe,
yeah.
The one that beat Francis Ngannou, the one that beat Daniel Cormier.
Yeah.
I feel like even though he did that, Tom Aspinall's just better. He's bigger.
You're talking about an MMA fighter who's been training all of mixed martial arts his whole life versus a part-time fighter, part-time firefighter.
Yeah, so I feel like Tom Aspinall in the first round, he's going to keep that streak going.
Yeah. But hey, that's our UFC GOATs versus current UFC champions in their respective divisions. Thank you for tuning in this week. We'll have a UFC 318 preview for next week. So make sure you subscribe to @Jon-Bernard K for clips on TikTok and Instagram, and @KRuzBros on YouTube for all of our YouTube and clips. But thank you again for tuning in. That's all we have time for. Back to you in the studio, Ryan.